Fall is here, which means pumpkin spice lattes, football, and of course another Windows update. And this year, we get Windows 11 25H2, the update that Microsoft swears isn't a big deal. But in reality, it decides if your PC keeps getting updates or gets shoved onto the...
HP just did something nobody in the PC industry has done in 40 years. They made Windows optional. Not removed as an option, optional. Starting Q3 2025, 40% of HP's consumer laptop lineup ships with Linux pre-installed as the default operating system. If you want Windows, you request it specifically and pay an extra $75. That's it. The company that helped put Windows on every desk in the world just turned it into a premium add-on. And the reason they did it has nothing to do with ideology. It's pure math. HP shipped 57 million computers in 2024. They are the second largest PC manufacturer on the planet. When a company that size restructures its default operating system, it doesn't just affect their own margins. It sends a signal to every other manufacturer, every retailer, and every supply chain partner that the move is financially viable. This isn't a startup experiment. This is one of the two companies that built Microsoft's hardware empire deciding that Windows is no longer worth the cost of making it the default. The breaking point was Windows 11. When Microsoft rolled out Windows 11, they hardened the hardware requirements in ways that directly hit HP's cost structure. TPM 2.0 became mandatory. Specific CPU generations were required. RAM and storage minimums went up. For Microsoft, these were security and compatibility decisions. For HP, they were a manufacturing cost problem. A budget laptop HP could sell profitably at $349 under Windows 10 now needed to start at $429 just to meet Windows 11 spec requirements. That $80 gap wiped out HP's competitiveness at the entry-level price point entirely. Customers didn't pay the difference. They bought Chromebooks instead. So in late 2023, HP's finance team ran the numbers. What does Windows actually cost per device when you account for everything? Microsoft's OEM licensing fee runs between $52 and $68 per unit depending on volume. That's paid before a single component is assembled. Then add $34 to $47 per device in additional hardware costs driven purely by Windows 11's mandatory spec floor. The TPM chip, faster processors, extra RAM, faster storage. Then support costs. HP's own data showed Windows laptops generated approximately 2.3 support calls per device over a 3-year life cycle at around $18 per resolved ticket. That's $31.50 per laptop in support overhead, and the calls weren't about faulty hardware. They were about Windows itself. Update broke my computer. Laptop slowed down after updating. Can't print since the last Windows update. HP was absorbing the cost of Microsoft's user experience problems. Then returns. 9.7% of Windows 11 laptops came back within 30 days. Nearly 1 in 10 machines. Top reasons customers cited. Too slow, too complicated, didn't meet expectations. The hardware was fine. Windows 11 wasn't. Each return cost HP around $68 in processing and refurbishment. When you stack all of it, licensing, hardware uplift, support, returns, the total Windows cost burden comes to roughly $138 per device on laptops selling for $400 to $600. That's up to 35% of revenue consumed by the operating system before HP makes $1 of profit. The economics simply stopped working. Before committing to any shift, HP ran a real test. In March 2024, they quietly listed 40,000 Ubuntu preloaded laptops on HP.com with no marketing, no campaign, just a lower price, $50 to $75 cheaper than equivalent Windows models. Those 40,000 units sold out in 11 days. Customer reviews averaged 4.6 stars versus 3.8 stars for comparable Windows models. Support call volume dropped 81%. Linux buyers averaged 0.4 calls per device against 2.1 for Windows buyers. The return rate fell from 9.7% to 1.8%. HP expanded the pilot in June 2024 to 12 laptop models. Sales exceeded projections by 340%. By December 2024, Linux laptops were 8% of HP's direct sales volume and the highest margin units in the entire lineup, 127% better margins than equivalent Windows machines. The data wasn't close. It wasn't a niche preference signal. Mainstream consumers, people who just wanted a working computer, were choosing Linux and keeping it. That changed everything internally at HP. Microsoft found out about HP's plans in November 2024. Not from HP, but through retailers already preparing their 2025 product lineup. What followed was a three-stage response that failed at every step. First, Microsoft offered a 30% discount on Windows licensing fees, dropping the per-device cost to roughly $36 to $48. HP declined because licensing was only one piece of a $138 problem. A discount on one line item doesn't fix the hardware requirements, the support costs, or the return rate. Second, Microsoft threatened to pull marketing development funds, the cooperative advertising money they give OEMs to promote Windows PCs. HP reportedly receives around $240 million annually. HP's finance team put that number next to the $1.12 billion in projected annual savings from the Linux shift. It wasn't a difficult comparison. Third, Microsoft's legal team argued that making Linux the default violated prominent positioning clauses in HP's existing OEM agreement. HP's legal team disagreed, and when Microsoft escalated to threatening contract termination, HP pointed out the obvious. If Microsoft terminates the Windows license, HP simply stops selling Windows entirely. Linux doesn't require a Microsoft license. That outcome is far worse for Microsoft than for HP. Microsoft backed down. Dell, which shipped 46 million PCs in 2024, had been running its own internal Linux evaluation since mid-2023. 3 weeks after HP's announcement, Dell's CFO publicly signaled they were evaluating expanded Linux options for consumer products. The math Dell is looking at is identical to HP's. When the two largest Windows OEMs in the world are running the same calculation and arriving at the same answer, that isn't a trend. That's a structural shift. Windows didn't lose HP because Linux revolutionized itself. It lost HP because Microsoft spent years making Windows progressively more expensive to build for, more expensive to support, and more frustrating for the customers buying it. HP ran the numbers. The numbers said Linux. And now every other manufacturer is doing the same math.
You are not a Microsoft slave. You own your device. Take your freedom back. Dump Windows, otherwise it will own you.
Absolutely. There are a ton of these investments that will be dead ends.
That we're going to leave. We're going to stop supporting Windows.
Nearly 1 billion people are still running Windows 10 right now, and Microsoft has absolutely no answer for it. Not a plan, not a fix, not even an apology. Just silence. And while Microsoft sits quiet, Zorin OS just hit 2 million downloads in 3 months. The majority from people who were done waiting. This is not a tech story anymore. This is a revolt. And today you are going to understand exactly why it happened, who started it, and why Bill Gates himself should be furious at what his own company has become. Gates built Microsoft on one promise: a computer on every desk and in every home. Not every approved desk. Not every verified home. Every single one. That promise turned a small software company into the most dominant technology corporation on the planet. Windows became the default. For decades nobody questioned it. You bought a computer, it ran Windows, and that was just the way the world worked. But the people running Microsoft today took that loyalty, that trust built over 30 years, and they burned it. deliberately, systematically, one bad decision at a time. It started with Windows 11 and the TPM 2.0 requirement. Microsoft looked at 240 million perfectly functional computers, machines that browse the internet fine, run spreadsheets fine, do everything their owners need, and declared them incompatible. Not broken, not slow. Incompatible by a rule Microsoft wrote to benefit its hardware partners. Analysts at Connolly's confirmed the number. 240 million PCs pushed toward the trash. If you stacked those machines as folded laptops, the pile would reach 600 kilometers higher than the moon. And while this was happening, Microsoft was publishing sustainability reports and talking about carbon neutrality. That contradiction is not ironic. It is embarrassing. Then came the forced Microsoft account. Your own computer, hardware you paid for, now requires Microsoft's permission to operate. The local account option, something Windows users had for decades, got buried behind gray menus, extra screens, and deliberate friction. When people found workarounds, Microsoft patched them out. The bypass NRO command gone. MSCXH local only gone. Then they went after Rufus, the free open-source tool used by millions of IT professionals and system administrators to create clean bootable installs. Google Fiber users blocked. NTT users in Japan blocked. Deutsche Telekom users in Germany blocked. Pete Battard, the developer who built Rufus, stated publicly this was not a mistake. Blocking scripted requests while allowing browser downloads requires specific configuration. That is a deliberate policy decision made by someone inside Microsoft. And why? Because every user forced through a Microsoft account during setup becomes a Microsoft 365 subscriber target, a OneDrive storage customer, an advertising metric. Microsoft now serves ads inside Windows 11, inside the Start menu, inside File Explorer, inside the lock screen. You paid for the hardware. Microsoft is still selling you things on it. That is not a design choice. That is a monetization strategy running on top of an operating system you already own. Then came Copilot and Recall. Recall takes a screenshot of your screen every 5 seconds, analyzes it with AI, and stores everything in a searchable database on your hard drive. Passwords, encrypted messages, financial documents, everything visible on screen captured and indexed automatically. Cybersecurity expert Jeff Pard called it a risk in its entirety. The backlash was so severe Microsoft had to pause the rollout. But the damage was already done. Users had seen what Microsoft actually wanted: complete visibility into everything you do on your own machine. Dell's chief operating officer Jeffrey Clark dropped a number during an earnings call that should have sent shockwaves through Redmond. 500 million computers that fully meet Windows 11 requirements, correct chip, correct CPU, everything, and their owners still refuse to upgrade. They looked at everything Windows 11 demands and said no. They decided running unsupported software with no security patches was safer than handing Microsoft that level of access. When users willingly accept a security risk to avoid your product, you have lost something that cannot be recovered with a marketing campaign. October 14, 2025. Windows 10 support officially ends. Microsoft shuts the door on hundreds of millions of users. 5 weeks later, Zorin OS 18 launches. In the first month alone, 780,000 downloads came directly from Windows devices. 78% of all downloads traced back to Windows PCs. People were not curious. They were migrating. By January 2026, that number crossed 2 million. One distribution. One option among hundreds. 2 million people chose it specifically to escape Microsoft. Zorin OS runs on every machine Windows 11 rejected. No TPM 2.0 requirement. No hardware gatekeeping. You can take a computer Microsoft declared dead and have Zorin running on it fully within an hour. The taskbar is where you expect it. The Start menu opens the way you remember. Snap layouts work. System tray is in the right corner. Zero ads. No forced account. No Copilot watching your screen. Updates happen when you decide. And underneath all of it runs Ubuntu, meaning every Ubuntu tutorial online works. Hardware support is inherited from one of the most tested bases in existence, and the foundation is rock solid. The broader numbers